What would you do if you had 6 hours to find $50,000? Not to buy something, not to invest, but to save someone you love from disappearing forever. For Imani Okonkwo, that question was not hypothetical. It was her reality at 6:43 in the evening on a cold November Friday in Chicago, and the clock was ticking toward midnight with the ruthless precision of a guillotine blade. The text message had arrived at noon, interrupting her lunch break at the accounting firm where she worked as a junior analyst. 3 words from an unknown number that made her blood turn to ice water in her veins. "We have Zara." Then a photo that made Imani's sandwich fall from nerveless fingers onto the break room table. Her baby sister, her 22-year-old sister, who was supposed to be safe at Northwestern finishing her senior year, bound to a chair in a room with concrete walls and bad lighting, a strip of duct tape across her mouth, terror screaming from her wide brown eyes. The next message provided terms: $50,000 by midnight tonight. Cash. Instructions for delivery would follow at 11:30. Any contact with police would result in Zara being sold to people who paid well for young, pretty girls who had no one looking for them. Imani had spent the next 6 hours in a blur of escalating panic and devastating dead ends. Her bank account held exactly $3,422. Her credit cards had a combined limit of $8,000, most of which was already spent. Her savings had been drained 2 years ago when their mother died, and the medical bills came due. She had no car to sell, no jewelry worth pawning, no assets of any kind that could generate the impossible sum these people demanded. She had called her father in Detroit, but the man who had abandoned them when Imani was 12 and Zara was 10 had disconnected his number years ago. She had called her aunt in Atlanta, but Aunt Patricia was living on Social Security and could barely cover her own rent. She had called her best friend Keisha, who had cried and offered the $400 in her checking account, which was everything she had. Imani had gone to 3 different banks during her lunch hour and after leaving work, desperately trying to get emergency loans. Each time the answer was the same. Her credit score was not high enough. Her income was not sufficient collateral. The amount was too large for an unsecured personal loan. Come back with documentation, with a co-signer, with something more than desperation in her eyes. By 6 o'clock, Imani had exhausted every legitimate option she could think of. By 6:30, she had started walking the streets of downtown Chicago in a daze, trying to think of something, anything, any possible way to save her sister. The November wind cut through her thin wool coat like knives made of ice, but she barely felt it. How could she feel cold when her sister might be feeling so much worse? Right now? That was when she saw the restaurant, La Stella Nera, the Black Star. She had walked past it 100 times on her way to and from the office, had seen the expensive cars idling outside and the well-dressed people flowing through its doors. She had never been inside because she had never been able to afford it. The cheapest entree on the menu cost more than her weekly grocery budget. But tonight, through the golden glow of its windows, she saw something that made her stop. A group of men in expensive suits gathered around a private table in the back, and one of them, the one in the center, was counting out stacks of cash like it was nothing. Like $50,000 was pocket change to him. Imani was not thinking clearly. Later, she would acknowledge that. Desperation had stripped away her common sense and left only raw need. She pushed through the heavy oak doors of La Stella Nera and walked into a world that was not meant for women like her. The interior was all dark wood and warm candlelight, white tablecloths and crystal glasses, the murmur of expensive conversation and the clink of silverware that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A hostess in a black dress that cost more than Imani's entire wardrobe looked up with barely concealed disdain. "Do you have a reservation?" "No. I need." Imani's voice cracked. She was shaking now, trembling from cold and fear and the awful weight of helplessness. Every eye in the restaurant seemed to turn toward her, taking in her discount store coat and her sensible work flats and her natural hair twisted back in a style that was practical rather than fashionable. "I am sorry," the hostess said with a smile that was not sorry at all. "We are fully booked this evening. Perhaps you would like to try somewhere else." "Please." Imani hated the begging in her voice, but she was past pride now. "I just need to speak to someone. I need help. My sister is in trouble, and I do not know what to do, and I have tried everything, and The hostess was already gesturing to a man in a suit who looked like security. His face was stone as he moved toward Imani, clearly intending to escort her out before she caused a scene. Imani felt the last of her composure crumbling. She was going to break down crying in front of all these wealthy strangers, and then she was going to be thrown out onto the street, and then midnight would come, and then her sister would be gone forever. "Miss," the security man said firmly, "I am going to have to ask you to leave. Please." Tears were streaming down Imani's face now, hot against her cold cheeks. "Please, I am not crazy. I am not homeless. I am an accountant at Morrison and Blake. I have a job and a life and a sister who is only 22 years old, and some very bad people have her, and they are going to sell her if I do not find $50,000 by midnight. And I have been to every bank in the city, and no one will help me, and I do not know what else to do." The security man's grip closed around her upper arm, firm but not painful. "Miss, I understand you are upset, but this is not the place. Is there a problem here?" The voice that interrupted was deep and smooth, carrying an Italian accent that curled around the words like smoke. Everyone in the immediate vicinity seemed to freeze, including the security man, whose grip on Imani's arm loosened immediately. Imani turned toward the voice and found herself looking at the most striking man she had ever seen. He was tall, easily 6'3" or 4", with broad shoulders that filled out his perfectly tailored charcoal suit like it had been sewn directly onto his body. His hair was dark and swept back from a face that could have been carved by a Renaissance sculptor, all sharp angles and perfect proportions. But it was his eyes that caught her and held her. They were the color of aged whiskey, amber shot through with gold, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. He looked to be in his late 30s, maybe 40, with the kind of seasoned handsomeness that came from confidence and power rather than youth. There was a stillness to him that felt dangerous, like a predator who did not need to move quickly because nothing in his environment posed a threat. "Mr. Caruso," the security man said quickly, releasing Imani's arm like it had burned him. "I apologize for the disturbance. This woman was just leaving. Was she?" Those amber eyes had not left Imani's face. He studied her with an expression she could not read, taking in her tears, her trembling, the desperation that she knew must be written across every feature. "I asked you a question, Signorina." "Is there a problem here?" Imani swallowed hard. Every instinct she had was screaming at her that this man was dangerous, that she should apologize for the intrusion and flee back out into the cold November night. But her sister's terrified face flashed through her mind, and she found that she had no room left for fear of anything except losing Zara. "Yes." Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "There is a problem. My sister has been kidnapped by loan sharks. They want $50,000 by midnight or they will sell her. I have spent all day trying to find the money and I cannot, and I saw the cash through the window and I know this is crazy, and I know you do not know me, but I'm begging you, please. Is there any way you can help me?" The silence that followed her words seemed to stretch for an eternity. The security man looked like he wanted to drag her out bodily. The hostess had gone pale, and the man called Mr. Caruso simply stared at her with those unreadable amber eyes. Then he did something that surprised everyone, including Imani. He smiled. It was not a warm smile. There was something sharp in it, something predatory. But it was not unkind either. It was the smile of a man who had just encountered something unexpected and found himself intrigued. "Antonio," he said to the security man without looking away from Imani, "bring another chair to my table, and have the kitchen prepare something warm for our guest. She looks like she is about to collapse." The security man blinked. "Mr. Caruso, surely you do not mean to. Did I stutter?" The words were soft, almost gentle, but they carried a weight that made Antonio snap to attention immediately. "No, sir." "Right away, sir." He disappeared, and the man called Mr. Caruso extended his hand toward the back of the restaurant. "Come with me, Signorina. You can tell me about this sister of yours while you eat something. When was the last time you had a meal?" Imani opened her mouth to say she was not hungry, but the truth was that she had not eaten anything since breakfast, and even that had only been half a granola bar grabbed on her way out the door. The sandwich that had fallen from her hands at noon had never been replaced. I do not remember. That is what I thought. Come." He placed his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the restaurant toward the private section in the rear. His touch was light but somehow impossible to resist, steering her past tables of gawking diners and through a doorway draped with heavy velvet curtains. The private room beyond was smaller and even more luxurious than the main dining area. 3 men sat around a circular table covered with papers and, yes, stacks of cash. They looked up as Imani entered, their expressions ranging from confusion to suspicion to something that might have been amusement. "Gentlemen," Mr. Caruso said smoothly, We will continue this discussion tomorrow. Something more pressing has come up. The three men exchanged glances but did not argue. They gathered their papers and filed out of the room with murmured acknowledgments, leaving Imani alone with the man who had apparently just dismissed what looked like a very important business meeting on her behalf. Sit down before you fall down. He gestured to a chair that had been pulled up to the table, positioned across from where he was now settling into his own seat. Imani sank into it gratefully, her legs suddenly feeling like they might give out. My name is Dante Caruso, he said. And you are? Imani. Imani Okonkwo. Imani. He said her name like he was tasting it, rolling the syllables around on his tongue. A beautiful name. Nigerian, yes? Igbo? She nodded, surprised. Most people had no idea where her name came from, or they assumed it was made up. My mother was fond of West African art, Dante said by way of explanation. I learned to recognize the naming conventions. Now, Imani, tell me everything about your sister and the people who took her. So she did. The words poured out of her like water from a broken dam, all the details she had been carrying alone since noon. Zara was her baby sister, the one she had practically raised after their mother got sick. Their father had left when they were young, and their mother had worked 2 jobs to keep them fed and housed, which meant Imani had been the one making sure Zara did her homework and ate her vegetables and got to school on time. Zara was brilliant. Scholarship to Northwestern, pre-law, top of her class. She was going to be the one who made it, who climbed out of the struggle and built something lasting. But 6 months ago, she had started dating a boy named Jerome, who turned out to be less of a college student and more of a small-time criminal with big-time debts. Jerome had borrowed money from people who did not offer payment plans or accept late fees. When he could not pay, he had disappeared, leaving Zara holding the bag for his mistakes. The men who had come for the debt did not care that Zara had not borrowed the money herself. They only cared that Jerome had listed her as his emergency contact, which apparently made her responsible in their twisted logic. They gave her a week to come up with 20,000, Imani said, her voice hoarse from talking. She came to me terrified, and I scraped together everything I could. Sold my television, my nice work bag, my mother's jewelry that was supposed to be for her wedding day. We got 12,000. They said it was not enough. They doubled the debt as a penalty and said she had 1 more week. Dante had been listening in silence, his amber eyes never leaving her face. How did she end up being taken? She called me this morning from a payphone, said they had been following her, that she was scared. I told her to come to my apartment and we would figure something out together, but she never arrived. An hour later, I got the text with the photo and the demand. And the police? They said they will sell her, that they have buyers lined up for pretty young women who disappear without a trace. I cannot risk it. I cannot. Imani's voice broke on the last word. She had been holding herself together through sheer force of will, but sitting here in this warm, quiet room, having finally told someone everything, she felt the last of her strength deserting her. I know you do not know me, she said through tears. I know I'm just some crazy woman who walked in off the street, and I know that $50,000 is nothing to a man like you. But it is everything to me. It is my sister's life, and I will do anything you ask, if you will help me save her. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and withdrew a phone. He pressed a single button and held it to his ear. Marco, he said after a brief pause, I need you to find someone for me. A young woman named Zara Okonkwo. She has been taken by loan sharks, local operators who fancy themselves human traffickers. You have until 11:30 tonight. He listened for a moment, then gave a short nod. Text me the location when you have it. And Marco? Whoever took her, I want them alive. For now. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket, then turned those amber eyes back to Imani with an expression that was almost gentle. Your sister will be found and retrieved before midnight. That is no longer something you need to worry about. Imani stared at him, not daring to believe what she had just heard. That is, you are just like that? Just like that. But you do not even know me. You do not know if I am telling the truth. You do not know if... Signorina? Dante leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. I have been reading people my entire life. It is a necessary skill in my line of work, and I can tell you with complete certainty that you are not lying. Your fear is real. Your desperation is real. And the love you have for your sister is perhaps the most real thing I have encountered in a very long time." Imani felt fresh tears sliding down her cheeks, but these were different from the ones that had come before. These were tears of relief, of hope, of gratitude so profound it felt like it might crack her chest open. "How can I ever repay you?" Dante smiled again, and this time there was something warmer in it, something almost human beneath the predatory edge. "We can discuss that after your sister is safe. For now, eat something. You look like you have not had a proper meal in days." As if on cue, a waiter appeared with a steaming bowl of soup and a basket of fresh bread. Imani had not realized how hungry she was until the aroma hit her, rich and savory and impossibly comforting. She ate while Dante watched, his amber eyes thoughtful. He did not try to make conversation, did not fill the silence with small talk. He simply sat and observed, like a man cataloging data for future use. When the soup was finished and the bread basket emptied, Imani finally found her voice again. "Who are you? I mean, I know your name, but—" She gestured vaguely at their surroundings. "Who are you, really?" Dante considered the question for a moment before answering. "I am a businessman. I deal in imports and exports primarily. Real estate, investments, various other ventures. Some of them are legal, some of them exist in grayer areas, and some of them are the kind of thing that respectable people prefer not to know about." He spoke matter-of-factly, without shame or apology. This was who he was, and he was not interested in pretending otherwise. Imani appreciated that honesty, even as it unsettled her. "You are in the Mafia." It was not a question. Imani had grown up in Chicago. She knew what La Stella Nera was, even if she had never been inside. She knew the rumors about the men who dined in its private rooms and conducted business that had nothing to do with stock portfolios or corporate mergers. "I am the head of the Caruso family," Dante said simply. "We have controlled the Italian operations in this city for 4 generations. My father ran things before me and his father before him. It is a legacy I did not choose, but one I have accepted. And the men who took my sister? Small-timers. Street-level predators who prey on the vulnerable because they do not have the power or the connections to go after anyone else. They are beneath my notice under normal circumstances. But they made a mistake tonight." "What mistake?" "They took someone who matters to you. And you, Imani Okonkwo, have just become someone who matters to me." Imani felt a shiver run down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold she had left behind outside. There was something in Dante's voice, something possessive and absolute, that told her this night was going to change her life in ways she could not yet imagine. "Why?" She forced the question out past the sudden tightness in her throat. "Why do I matter to you? You just met me." Dante leaned back in his chair, studying her with those amber eyes that seemed to see everything. "Do you know how many people have walked through the doors of this restaurant over the years? Hundreds. Thousands. People who wanted money, power, favors, connections. People who came to beg, to negotiate, to threaten. And do you know how many of them walked in the way you did tonight?" Imani shook her head. "None. Not one. They all came with agendas, with angles, with carefully calculated approaches designed to manipulate or impress. But you—" He smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it now. "You walked in here with nothing but love for your sister and the courage to ask a complete stranger for help. You did not care about my reputation or my power. You only cared about saving someone you love. That is remarkably rare in my world." "I did not have time to be afraid," Imani admitted. "I did not have time to think about how crazy it was. I could not let them take her. I could not." "I know. And that is exactly why you matter." Dante's phone buzzed once and he glanced at the screen. His expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted, becoming sharper, more focused. Marco has found her. She is in a warehouse on the south side. 6 men guarding her, all armed. Nothing my people cannot handle. He stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease, and extended his hand to Imani. "Come with me. I assume you will want to be there when your sister is freed?" Imani took his hand without hesitation. His grip was warm and firm, surprisingly gentle for a man who had just ordered what she suspected would be a violent confrontation. "Will they? Will you have to kill them?" Dante considered the question as he led her out of the private room and through a back exit into a narrow alley where a black sedan was already waiting. "That depends on them. If they surrender your sister without resistance, they will live long enough to reconsider their life choices. If they fight. He shrugged. Then they have made their own decision. The sedan's back door opened as they approached, held by a man built like a professional wrestler, with a face that suggested he had won more fights than he had lost. He nodded respectfully to Dante, and eyed Imani with curiosity but no hostility. Boss. The team is en route. ETA 15 minutes. Good. We will be there in 20. Tell them to hold position until I arrive. The inside of the sedan was all black leather and tinted windows, smelling faintly of expensive cologne and something sharper beneath it. Imani settled into the seat beside Dante, acutely aware of his proximity, of the heat of his body and the controlled power in every line of his form. The drive south took them through neighborhoods that grew progressively darker and more industrial, the gleaming towers of downtown giving way to abandoned factories and overgrown lots. Imani watched the scenery pass with a strange sense of detachment, like this was all happening to someone else. The city at night was a different creature than the city by day. Shadows stretched longer, sounds carried farther, and every flash of movement in the periphery seemed laden with threat. Imani had lived in Chicago her entire life, but she had never seen this side of it before. The side that existed beneath the surface, where men like Dante operated and ordinary rules did not apply. Tell me about her, Dante said into the silence. Your sister. What is she like? Imani smiled despite herself. Zara is. She is everything I'm not. Brave in ways I have never been. She speaks her mind even when it gets her in trouble. She laughs too loud and loves too easily and trusts people when she should not. That is how she ended up with Jerome. She thought she could save him. And you? Do you try to save people? I try to keep them from needing to be saved in the first place. Prevention rather than rescue. It is less dramatic but more practical. Dante made a sound that might have been a laugh. And yet here you are, in the back of a car with a mob boss, riding to rescue your sister from kidnappers. That seems fairly dramatic to me. Yes, well. Imani glanced at him. Desperate times. Indeed. They lapsed into silence again, but it was a comfortable silence now, the kind that did not need to be filled. Imani found herself studying Dante's profile in the dim light filtering through the tinted windows. The sharp line of his jaw, the way his hands rested loosely on his thighs, relaxed but ready, the tiny scar above his left eyebrow that she had not noticed before. He caught her looking and raised an eyebrow. Something on your mind? I am trying to figure you out. And what have you concluded? That you are not what I expected? What did you expect? Imani considered the question honestly. Someone crueler. Someone who would want something in return before agreeing to help. Someone who would make me feel small for asking. Dante turned to face her fully, his amber eyes gleaming in the shadows. I am many things, Imani. Cruel when necessary, yes. Ruthless when required. I have done things that would make you sick if you knew the details. But I'm not in the habit of preying on the desperate or demanding payment from those who have nothing to give. That is the behavior of small men, and I did not build an empire by thinking small. So what do you want from me? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications that Imani was not ready to examine too closely. Dante smiled, and there was that warmth again, unexpected and somehow more unsettling than his earlier predatory edge. Ask me again after your sister is safe. Right now, the only thing I want is to see the look on your face when she is back in your arms. The sedan slowed and pulled to a stop behind a row of other black vehicles, parked in the shadow of an abandoned warehouse. Men in dark clothing moved efficiently through the darkness, their voices low and their movements precise. Dante opened the door and stepped out, then turned to offer Imani his hand. Stay close to me. Do not speak unless spoken to, and whatever happens, do not run. My men know not to shoot anyone who is with me, but in the chaos of a firefight, accidents can happen. Imani nodded, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She took his hand and let him help her out of the car, then followed as he strode toward a knot of men gathered near the warehouse's loading dock. One of them, a lean man with silver at his temples and eyes that missed nothing, stepped forward to meet Dante. 6 targets confirmed, he reported. 4 on the main floor, 2 in the office above. The girl is being held in a storage room in the back. She appears unharmed but frightened. Good. On my signal, take out the perimeter guards and move in. Non-lethal if possible, but do not risk any of our people. The girl's safety is the priority. Understood. The man melted back into the shadows, and suddenly things were moving very fast. Dante pulled Imani to the side of the building, pressing her against the cold brick wall with his body shielding hers. Stay here. Do not move until I come for you. Wait. Imani grabbed his arm before she could stop herself. Be careful. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or pleasure? Then he was gone, moving with the fluid grace of a man who had done this many times before. The next few minutes were a blur of muffled sounds and distant shouts. Imani pressed herself against the wall, her fingernails digging into the brick, praying to every god she could think of that Zara was okay, that this was not all for nothing, that she had not traded one nightmare for another. She could hear voices, commands barked in Italian and English, the occasional grunt of pain or impact. Somewhere inside, glass shattered. A man screamed once, sharply, then went silent. Imani's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat, her temples, her fingertips pressed against the cold brick. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. She thought about her mother, who had worked double shifts at the hospital and the nursing home to keep food on the table. She thought about Zara as a child, gap-toothed and laughing, asking Imani to braid her hair before school. She thought about all the ordinary moments that made up a life, the moments that could be erased in an instant by violence and cruelty. Then silence, then footsteps approaching, and Dante's voice calling her name. Imani, it is done. Come. She pushed away from the wall and followed the sound of his voice through a side door and into the warehouse's cavernous interior. The smell hit her first, rust and oil, and something sharper that she suspected was blood. Then her eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, and she saw the bodies. 6 men lay scattered across the concrete floor, some unconscious, some groaning in pain, none dead as far as she could tell. Dante's men moved among them with zip ties and efficiency, securing wrists and ankles with practiced speed. But Imani barely registered any of that, because Dante was leading her toward the back of the warehouse, toward a storage room with a metal door that had been kicked open, and there, sitting on a folding chair with tears streaming down her face and duct tape residue still sticky on her cheeks, was Zara. Imani. Zara. They collided in a tangle of arms and tears and incoherent words, holding each other so tight that neither could breathe. Imani ran her hands over her sister's face, her arms, her shoulders, checking for injuries, finding nothing but fear and exhaustion. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? Did they touch you? No. No, I am okay. They kept saying what they would do if you did not pay. I was so scared, Imani. I was so scared you would not find the money in time. I did not find the money. Imani pulled back enough to look at her sister's face. Someone else did. She turned to find Dante standing a few feet away, watching the reunion with an expression that was difficult to read. Zara followed her gaze and went very still. Imani. That is Dante Caruso. I know. The Dante Caruso? The one who... Zara lowered her voice to a whisper. The one who runs everything in this city. I know. Zara's eyes went wide, flicking between her sister and the most dangerous man in Chicago. Imani, what did you do? Before Imani could answer, Dante stepped forward and inclined his head in a gesture that was surprisingly courtly. Miss Okonkwo, I'm glad to see you safe. Your sister was very persuasive on your behalf. Persuasive how? Zara demanded, putting herself slightly in front of Imani, in a gesture that was protective and probably futile given their circumstances. What does she owe you? What did you make her promise? Dante smiled, and there was genuine amusement in it now. Nothing. Your sister owes me nothing. She walked into my restaurant tonight with more courage than most of the men who work for me, and she asked for help with such honest desperation that I could not refuse. That is all. Zara clearly did not believe him, but she was smart enough not to argue with a man surrounded by armed subordinates in a warehouse full of unconscious criminals. Okay. Whatever. Can we go now? Of course. Marco will drive you both home. He gestured, and the lean man with silver temples appeared seemingly from nowhere. Make sure they get inside safely. And Marco? Dante's voice hardened slightly. Post a team on their building. I do not want any of these men's associates getting ideas about retaliation. Yes, boss. Dante turned back to Imani, and for a moment something passed between them that she could not name. A connection, a promise, a question that had not yet been asked. "Thank you," Imani said softly. "I do not know how I will ever repay you. Have dinner with me. Tomorrow night. I will send a car at 7. It was not a request, but somehow Imani did not mind. "Okay? Good." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers brushing her cheek in a touch that was barely there and somehow burned all the way down to her bones. "Sleep well, Imani. I will see you tomorrow." Then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows with his men, leaving Imani and Zara alone with Marco and a borrowed sense of safety that felt fragile but real. The drive back to their apartment was quiet. Zara leaned against Imani's shoulder, exhausted beyond words, while Marco navigated the dark streets with professional ease. When they finally pulled up in front of their building, Imani was surprised to see 2 men already stationed in the lobby, dressed in suits that did not quite hide the bulge of weapons beneath their jackets. "You are safe here," Marco said as he opened the door for them. "Boss's orders. No one gets past us." "Thank you." Marco nodded once, then drove away into the night. Imani guided Zara up to their apartment, got her into a hot shower and clean clothes, made her drink a cup of tea and eat a piece of toast. Then she tucked her sister into bed like she had done 1,000 times when they were young, smoothing the covers and pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Get some sleep. We will figure everything out in the morning." "Imani?" "Yeah?" Zara's voice was small, scared, but also something else. Curious, maybe, or awed. "Who is that man to you?" Imani thought about the question, about the amber eyes that had looked at her with such intensity, about the warmth of his hand on her back and the way he had made one phone call and changed everything. "I do not know yet," she admitted, "but I think I am going to find out." She left Zara's door open a crack, the way she used to when her sister was afraid of the dark, and went to her own room. She was bone-tired, wrung out from fear and adrenaline and relief, but when she finally lay down and closed her eyes, it was not her sister's terrified face she saw. It was amber eyes and a predator's smile, and a voice that said, "You have just become someone who matters to me." Imani fell asleep wondering what that would mean for the rest of her life. The next morning dawned gray and cold, but Imani barely noticed. She was too busy fielding questions from Zara, who had recovered enough from her ordeal to be intensely curious about how her accountant sister had managed to attract the attention of Chicago's most powerful crime boss. "He just helped you? For free? No strings attached?" That is what he said. "Imani, nobody does anything for free, especially not men like Dante Caruso. What does he want from you?" "He asked me to have dinner with him tonight." Zara's eyes went wide. "Dinner? Like a date?" "I do not know." "Maybe." "I think so." "You think so?" "Imani, the man runs the Italian Mafia. He probably has people killed before breakfast. You cannot just casually have dinner with him." "He saved your life," Imani pointed out. "Whatever else he is, he did that." Zara had no response to that because it was true. They both knew what would have happened if Dante had not intervened. The men who had taken Zara had not been bluffing about their intentions. The day passed in a blur of normalcy that felt surreal after the previous night's events. Imani called in sick to work, too emotionally exhausted to face spreadsheets and budget reports. She and Zara watched movies and ate takeout and did not talk about what had happened, because neither of them was ready to process it yet. At 6 o'clock, Imani started getting ready for dinner with a nervous energy that made her hands shake. She did not own anything fancy enough for whatever restaurant Dante would take her to, but she did her best with a simple black dress that she usually saved for job interviews, and a pair of heels that made her legs look longer than they were. Zara watched her apply makeup with a mixture of concern and reluctant admiration. "You look beautiful. He is going to eat you alive." "Maybe I will eat him first." The joke fell flat, because they both knew there was nothing funny about the situation. Imani was about to walk into the den of a lion, and the only armor she had was a dress from the clearance rack and a gratitude so deep it felt like drowning. The car arrived at exactly 7 o'clock, the same black sedan from the night before, with the same driver who had taken them home. Imani kissed Zara goodbye and promised to text as soon as dinner was over, then slid into the back seat and tried to remember how to breathe. The restaurant was not La Stella Nera this time. It was somewhere quieter, more intimate, tucked away on a side street in a neighborhood that screamed old money and older secrets. The maitre d' led her to a private table in the back, where Dante was already waiting with a glass of wine in his hand and that amber gaze fixed on the door, He stood when he saw her, and something flickered in his eyes that might have been appreciation. "You came. Did you think I would not? I thought you might have second thoughts. Most people would after learning what I am." Imani took the seat across from him, accepting the wine that materialized at her elbow as if by magic. "You saved my sister. That buys you at least one. Dinner. At least one." Dante smiled, and it softened his features in ways that made him look almost human. "I was hoping to buy more than that." The evening unfolded in ways that Imani had not expected. She had prepared herself for interrogation, for manipulation, for the kind of power games that men in Dante's position were known for. Instead, she got conversation. Real conversation. About her work and her family, about his travels and his interests, about books they had both read and places they wanted to see. Dante was intelligent and well-read and surprisingly funny when he let his guard down. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He treated the waitstaff with respect rather than condescension. He laughed at her jokes and told her stories that made her laugh in return. By the time dessert arrived, Imani had almost forgotten what he was. Almost. "I need to ask you something," she said as they shared a slice of tiramisu. "And I need you to be honest with me. Ask. Last night. The men who took Zara, what happened to them?" Dante set down his fork and considered the question with more seriousness than she had expected. "They are alive, all 6 of them. They have been strongly encouraged to leave Chicago and never return. Their operation has been dissolved, their assets seized, their connections severed. They will not be a threat to your sister or anyone else again. You did not kill them." "No. Why not? From what I understand, that is how things are usually handled in your world." Dante leaned back in his chair, those amber eyes searching her face. "Because you asked me to be careful, because you looked at me with those beautiful brown eyes and asked me to come back to you, and I decided in that moment that perhaps I could be something other than what I have always been. For you." Imani's heart stuttered in her chest. "For me? For you?" He reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb tracing slow circles on her wrist. "I have been in this business my entire life, Imani. I have done things that would horrify you. I have made choices that I cannot undo. But last night, when you walked into my restaurant with tears on your face and courage in your spine, something shifted. I looked at you and I thought, this is what real bravery looks like. This is what love looks like. Not the loyalty bought with money or enforced with fear, but genuine devotion, the kind that makes someone walk into a lion's den for the chance to save someone they love. I did not know what else to do." "Exactly. You did not think about the danger or the consequences. You only thought about your sister. That kind of purity is." He paused, seeming to search for the right word. "Rare. Valuable. And I find that I want to protect it. To protect you." Imani should have been frightened. She should have pulled her hand away and made an excuse and fled back to the safe, ordinary life she had been living before last night. But she did not move. She could not move. Because something in Dante's eyes was calling to something in her, and she was not sure she wanted to resist. "What happens now?" she asked. "That depends on you." "I am not going to force you into anything, Imani. I am not going to threaten or manipulate or coerce. If you want to walk away tonight and never see me again, I will have Marco drive you home and you will be protected for as long as you live, with no obligations attached. But if you want to stay, if you want to see where this goes, then I'm asking you to take a chance on a man who does not deserve it, but who will spend every day trying to be worthy of you." It was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to her, and it terrified her, and it thrilled her, and somewhere in the space between those two feelings, Imani made a decision that would change everything. "I want to stay." Dante's smile was like sunrise after a long night. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. "Then stay." The weeks that followed were a strange dance of 2 worlds colliding. Imani continued to go to work at Morrison and Blake, continued to help Zara recover from her ordeal, continued to live her ordinary life in her ordinary apartment in her ordinary neighborhood. But now there were shadows watching over her, guards she rarely saw but always felt, a sense of safety that she had never known before. And there was Dante, always Dante, weaving himself into her life in ways both subtle and profound. He sent flowers to her office, beautiful arrangements that made her coworkers whisper and speculate. He called her every evening, his deep voice wrapping around her like a blanket as he asked about her day and told her about his own, the sanitized version at least. He took her to dinners and shows and galleries, always careful to keep her away from the darker aspects of his business, always treating her like something precious. Zara watched it all with a mixture of wariness and grudging acceptance. She did not trust Dante, might never trust him, but she could not deny that her sister was happier than she had been in years, that the shadows under Imani's eyes were fading, that her laugh came easier and her smiles came more often. "He is changing you," Zara said one evening as they shared a bottle of wine in their apartment. "I do not know if that is good or bad. I am changing myself." Imani took a sip of her wine. "He is just giving me the space to do it. Are you in love with him?" The question hung in the air, heavy and important. Imani thought about amber eyes and predator smiles, about a man who had made one phone call and saved her world, about the way he looked at her like she was the most fascinating thing he had ever seen. "I think I might be." "Is that crazy?" "Probably." Zara refilled their glasses. "But maybe crazy is what we need." A month after the night that changed everything, Dante took Imani to his home for the first time. It was a penthouse in one of the city's most exclusive buildings, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art and furniture that cost more than her annual salary. But it was also surprisingly warm, filled with books and photographs and the small touches that made a space feel lived in. "I wanted you to see where I live," Dante said as he poured them both a drink. "Where I actually live, not the offices and restaurants and meeting places. It is beautiful. It is empty." He handed her a glass and clinked it against his own. "I have lived here for 10 years, and it has never felt like home, just a place to sleep between obligations. But lately," he paused, his amber eyes finding hers, "lately I find myself thinking about what it would look like with your things in it. Your books on the shelves, your art on the walls, your toothbrush in the bathroom." Imani's breath caught. "Dante." "I know it is fast. I know we have only been together for a month, but I have spent my entire life being patient, playing the long game, waiting for the right moment. And for once, I do not want to wait. I want you, Imani. Here, with me, building something together. I have a sister who needs me, a job, a life. Your sister can have her own place in this building, fully furnished, fully protected, fully paid for. Your job," he shrugged. "Keep it if it makes you happy. Quit it if it does not. Money is not something you will ever need to worry about again. And your life?" He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. "Your life is exactly what I want to be part of. The real parts of it. The messy parts. All of it." She should have said no. She should have asked for time, for space, for the chance to think rationally about what he was offering. But Imani had spent her entire life being rational, and where had it gotten her? Scraping by, barely surviving, too afraid to take chances. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, yes. Let us build something." Dante kissed her then, and it was nothing like the careful, controlled kisses they had shared before. This was hungry and desperate and claiming, his hands tangling in her hair as he pulled her against him. Imani melted into him, surrendering to the heat and the need that had been building since that first night in La Stella Nera. They did not make it to the bedroom. They barely made it to the couch, shedding clothes in a trail across his expensive floor, touching and tasting and learning each other with an urgency that left them both breathless. When he finally sank into her, Imani cried out and held on tight, and Dante whispered her name like a prayer against her throat. Afterwards, lying tangled together on his couch with the city lights glittering beyond the windows, Imani traced patterns on his chest and thought about how strange life was. A month ago, she had been drowning in desperation and fear. Now she was here, in the arms of a man who terrified and thrilled her in equal measure, contemplating a future she had never imagined. "Tell me something true," she murmured. "Something you have never told anyone else." Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then, his voice low and rough, he said, "I am afraid of losing you. I have never been afraid of anything in my life. Not death, not pain, not any of the things that normal people fear. But the thought of you walking away, of you deciding that I am not worth the risk. That terrifies me. I am not going anywhere. Promise me." She lifted her head to look at him, to meet those amber eyes that had become her anchor in the storm. "I promise. For as long as you want me, I am yours. Forever, then." He pulled her close and kissed her forehead, "Because I am never letting you go." 2 months into their relationship, Imani learned just how far Dante would go to protect what was his. It started with a phone call at 3 in the morning. She felt him leave the bed, heard his low voice in the hallway, the words too quiet to make out but the tone unmistakable. When he came back, there was something different in his eyes. Something cold. What is wrong? Nothing you need to worry about. Go back to sleep. Dante? He sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulders tense beneath his t-shirt. One of the men we let go, the ones who took your sister, he has been talking, making threats, saying things about you that have reached ears I would rather they had not reached. Imani sat up, pulling the sheets around her. What kind of things? The kind of things that put a target on your back. Other organizations, rivals, people who would like nothing more than to find my weakness. He turned to look at her, and there was genuine fear in his amber eyes. I should have eliminated them when I had the chance. I was trying to be better, for you, and now? What are you going to do? What I have to do? What I should have done from the beginning? He started to rise, but Imani caught his arm. Wait. If you do this, if you kill them. She struggled to find the words. Will it make you safer? Will it make me safer? Yes. Then do it. I am not asking you to be someone you are not. I am asking you to protect us both. If that means... She swallowed hard. If that means doing terrible things, then do them. Just come back to me. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her with a desperation that stole her breath. You are remarkable, he whispered against her lips. Do you know that? Most women would run screaming from what I am about to do. You are telling me to be careful while I do it. I love you. That means accepting all of you, even the parts that scare me. He left an hour later, and Imani did not sleep. She sat in the window of his penthouse and watched the city lights and thought about what she had become. A woman who could tell the man she loved to kill someone and mean it. A woman who had traded her morality for safety, her principles for love. She should have felt horrified. Instead, she felt oddly at peace. Dante returned at dawn, slipping into the shower without waking her, though she had not been asleep. When he emerged, there was no blood on him, no evidence of what he had done, just exhaustion in the lines of his face and something that might have been relief. It is done. All of them? All of them. They will not threaten you or anyone else ever again. Imani rose from the window seat and crossed to where he stood. She wrapped her arms around him and held on tight, feeling the tension slowly drain from his body. Thank you. Do not thank me for that. I am thanking you for protecting me, for protecting Zara, for doing what needed to be done even though you knew I might hate you for it. Could you? Hate me? She pulled back to look at him, at this man who had killed for her and would kill again, who wore his power like a second skin and his love for her like armor. No, I do not think I could ever hate you. But I might fear what you are capable of. That is fair. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. I fear it too sometimes. They did not speak of that night again, but something shifted between them. A barrier fell, a pretense abandoned. Imani stopped pretending that Dante was anything other than what he was, and Dante stopped trying to hide the darkness that lived inside him. Paradoxically, it brought them closer. 3 months after that night, Dante took Imani to meet his family. His mother, a tiny woman with silver hair and sharp eyes named Lucia, looked her up and down with the scrutiny of a jeweler examining a diamond. You are not Italian. No, ma'am. I am Nigerian American. And you love my son? Very much. Lucia nodded slowly, then surprised everyone by pulling Imani into a crushing hug. Good. He needs someone who is not afraid of him. All these little wives and mistresses he has had over the years, they were all afraid. I could see it in their eyes. But you look at him like he is just a man. He is just a man. A complicated one, but still just a man. From that moment on, Dante Caruso was firmly in Imani's corner. She taught her to cook pasta the proper way, to curse in Italian to navigate the complex social dynamics of Mafia family gatherings. She became the mother Imani had lost, and Imani became the daughter Lucia had never had. Dante watched it all with wonder in his eyes. You have conquered my mother, he said one evening after a Sunday dinner that had lasted 4 hours. I did not think that was possible. I told you, I'm not afraid of anything. Except losing me. Yes. She leaned against him, feeling his arm wrap around her shoulders. That terrifies me. Me too. They stood in comfortable silence watching the sunset over the city, and Imani thought about how far they had come from that desperate night in La Stella Nera. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of change and challenge. Imani moved into Dante's penthouse, and Zara took the apartment 2 floors below, close enough for sisterly visits but far enough for privacy. Imani kept her job for a while, then quietly transitioned to working on nonprofit projects that Dante helped fund, using her accounting skills to help organizations that served communities like the one she had grown up in. She learned the rhythms of Dante's world, the parts he let her see and the parts he kept hidden. She met his lieutenants and his business partners, earned their grudging respect by refusing to be intimidated. She attended events on his arm and learned to navigate the treacherous waters of Mafia politics with grace and steel. There were difficult moments, of course, times when Dante came home with shadows in his eyes and blood on his knuckles, when she knew better than to ask questions she did not want answered. Times when his world intruded on hers in ways that frightened her, that made her question whether she had made the right choice. One such moment came 7 months after that first night, when a business deal went wrong and Dante's rivals made a move on his territory. Imani was in the kitchen making dinner when the phone rang with news that shattered their carefully constructed normalcy. Mr. Caruso has been shot. He is being transported to St. Mary's now. The world tilted sideways. Imani gripped the counter to keep from falling, her mind refusing to process the words. Shot. Dante had been shot. The man who had seemed invincible, who moved through the world like nothing could touch him, was bleeding in an ambulance somewhere in the city. She made it to the hospital in record time, running red lights and breaking speed limits and not caring about any of it. Marco met her in the lobby, his face grim. He is in surgery, 3 bullets. 1 to the shoulder, 1 to the chest, 1 grazed his head. They are doing everything they can. Imani sat in that sterile waiting room for 8 hours, surrounded by Dante's men and his mother and his sister Gabriella, who had flown in from Milan as soon as she heard the news. She did not cry. She did not speak. She simply sat and waited and prayed to every god she could think of, bargaining with the universe for the life of the man she loved. At 3 a.m, a surgeon emerged, looking exhausted but not devastated. He made it through. It is going to be a long recovery, but he is stable. The relief was so intense that Imani's knees buckled. Marco caught her before she hit the floor, holding her up while she sobbed into his expensive suit jacket. She did not leave Dante's side for the next week. She slept in a chair beside his bed, held his hand through the worst of the pain, read to him when he was conscious, and talked to him when he was not. You should not be here, he rasped on the 3rd day, his voice rough from the breathing tube they had removed. It is not safe. Whoever did this might try again. Let them try. Imani squeezed his hand tighter. I am not leaving you. Stubborn woman. You love that about me. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. I do. I really do. The men who had shot him were found within the week. Dante was still in his hospital bed when Marco brought him the news, along with photographs that made even Imani look away. It is done, boss. They will not be hurting anyone else. Good. Dante closed his eyes. Now get out. I want to be alone with my woman. When they were alone, he turned to Imani with a vulnerability she had rarely seen. I almost died. I know. I have been shot before, stabbed twice, nearly blown up once. But this time was different. This time, all I could think about was you, that I might never see your face again, that I might never get the chance to tell you. Tell me what? That you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. That I do not deserve you, but I'm too selfish to let you go. That I want to spend whatever time I have left, whether that is 50 years or 50 days, making you happy. Imani leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, gentle and careful of his wounds. Then do that. Start right now. He recovered slowly, frustrated by his body's limitations, irritable and difficult and occasionally cruel. Imani weathered it all with patience she did not know she possessed, pushing back when he went too far, holding him when the pain got bad, refusing to let him retreat into the darkness that called to him. By the time he was back on his feet, something had fundamentally shifted between them. They had been through fire together, had faced the very real possibility of loss, and had emerged on the other side stronger than before. I want to make this official, Dante said one evening as they sat on his balcony watching the sunset. Not just the ring on your finger. I want a wedding. A real one. With your family and mine and everyone who matters. A Mafia wedding? He laughed, the sound still slightly rough from his healing lungs. A wedding. The Mafia part is just window dressing. Okay. Okay? Okay. Let us plan a wedding. The next 3 months were consumed with preparations. Lucia took over most of the planning, which was both a blessing and a curse. She had opinions about everything, from the flowers to the music to the exact shade of white Imani's dress should be. Imani learned to pick her battles, surrendering the things that did not matter and holding firm on the things that did. Zara was her maid of honor, of course. She had come a long way from the terrified girl tied to a chair in that warehouse. She was finishing her degree, working part-time at a legal aid clinic, building a life that was complicated but increasingly hopeful. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as they stood in the bridal boutique, surrounded by mountains of tulle and satin. "Marriage is a big step. Marriage to a crime boss is an even bigger one." "I am sure." Imani ran her fingers over a dress that cost more than her old apartment's annual rent. "He is not perfect. His world is not safe. But he loves me, and I love him, and that is enough." "Is it, though?" "It has to be. Because I cannot imagine my life without him anymore. I do not want to." Zara was quiet for a long moment, then she nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Then let us find you a dress that will make him forget how to breathe." They found it an hour later. A stunning creation of ivory silk and delicate lace, with a fitted bodice that showed off Imani's curves and a flowing skirt that moved like water. When she emerged from the dressing room, Zara burst into tears. "You look like a queen." "I feel like one." The wedding took place on a warm June evening in the gardens of Lucia's estate outside the city. 200 guests gathered beneath strings of fairy lights, watching as Imani walked down the aisle on Marco's arm, since she had no father to give her away. Dante waited at the altar in a suit so perfectly tailored it might have been painted on. His amber eyes never left her face as she approached, and when she finally reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." The ceremony was a blend of traditions, Italian and Nigerian, and purely their own. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to love and protect and challenge each other for as long as they both drew breath. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Dante kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. The reception lasted until dawn, a celebration of food and music and dancing that seemed to go on forever. Imani danced with her husband, with her sister, with Lucia and Gabriella, and Marco and countless others whose names she could not remember. She ate too much and drank too much and laughed until her sides hurt. At some point in the early hours of the morning, Dante pulled her away from the crowd and onto a balcony overlooking the gardens. "Happy? More than I have ever been. Good." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Because this is just the beginning. I have plans for us, Imani Caruso, big plans." "Should I be worried?" "Only if you're afraid of being loved beyond reason for the rest of your life." She turned in his arms, looping her hands behind his neck. "I think I can handle that." "I love you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. You make me want to be better. You already are better. You just needed someone to see it." They stood there until the sun came up, wrapped in each other and their future, and Imani thought about how this story would sound if she ever told it. But then he would hold her in the darkness and whisper that she was his light, that she was the reason he wanted to be better, that loving her was the first truly good thing he had done in a lifetime of bad choices. And she would remember why she stayed. 1 year to the day after the night that changed everything, Dante took her back to La Stella Nera, but this time they were celebrating something different, something neither of them had planned, but both of them wanted more than they had realized. Imani had discovered she was pregnant 2 weeks earlier. She had stared at the test for a full 5 minutes, her mind refusing to process what the 2 pink lines meant. Then she had cried, not from sadness but from a joy so overwhelming it felt like it might crack her open. Telling Dante had been terrifying. They had never discussed children, not seriously. His world was dangerous, and bringing a baby into it felt like an act of either supreme hope or supreme foolishness. She had no idea how he would react. She had told him over dinner at home, the words tumbling out before she could lose her nerve. "I am pregnant." Dante had gone very still. Then, slowly, a smile had spread across his face that transformed him from dangerous mob boss into something almost boyish. "Pregnant?" You are sure? I am sure. About 8 weeks along, according to the doctor. He had risen from his chair, crossed to where she sat, and dropped to his knees in front of her. His hands had found her still flat stomach, pressing gently against the place where their child was growing. A baby. Our baby. Are you happy? Imani, I am. He had looked up at her with tears in his eyes. Actual tears, the first she had ever seen from him. I am terrified and overwhelmed and happier than I have ever been in my life. They sat at the same table where he had first listened to her story, ate the same soup he had ordered to warm her shivering body, drank sparkling cider instead of wine. Then, as dessert was being cleared, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Imani's heart skipped, though she was already wearing his ring on her finger. They were already married, already expecting a child. What more could there be? Dante opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a diamond pendant, and Imani laughed with relief and surprise. What is this for? For surviving a year with me? He rose from his seat and moved behind her to clasp the necklace around her throat. The pendant settled just above her collarbone, cool against her warm skin. For choosing me when you had every reason to run. For carrying our child despite the dangers of my world. For being the most courageous woman I have ever known. Imani reached up to touch the diamond, feeling its facets beneath her fingertips. 1 year ago tonight, a terrified woman walked into this restaurant and changed my life. She asked me for help with such courage and such love that I could not refuse. Dante returned to his seat, those amber eyes gleaming with emotion. And I have spent every day since then trying to be worthy of that courage. I do not always succeed. I am not always the man you deserve. But I am trying, Imani. Every day I am trying. I know. And that is all I have ever asked. The months that followed were filled with preparation for the baby's arrival. Lucia took over most of the nursery decoration, insisting on traditional Italian craftsmanship for the crib and changing table. Zara came by every weekend to help sort through tiny clothes and baby books, her eyes occasionally going soft with something that might have been longing. You should have one of these yourself someday, Imani teased one afternoon as they folded onesies into neat piles. Maybe? Zara smiled, a private expression that made Imani curious. I have actually been seeing someone. What? Who? Why did you not tell me? Because I was not sure it would last. And because? Zara hesitated. He is one of Dante's men. Imani set down the onesie she was holding. Which one? Marco. The silence that followed was loaded with implications. Marco was Dante's right hand, his most trusted lieutenant. He was older than Zara by at least 15 years, and he had seen and done things that would give most people nightmares. Does Dante know? He introduced us. Sort of. I kept running into Marco in the lobby, and he was always so polite, so protective. One day I asked him to have coffee with me, and Zara shrugged. It just happened. Are you happy? I am. He makes me feel safe, Imani. Really safe. For the first time since that night in the warehouse. Then I'm happy for you. Both of you. Imani meant it. Her sister had been through hell, and if Marco could give her the security and love she deserved, then the age difference and the complicated career did not matter. Dante took the news with more equanimity than she had expected. I know, he said when she mentioned it over dinner. Marco asked my permission 3 months ago. And you gave it? He is a good man. The best I have. If anyone can keep your sister safe in our world, it is him. You approve? I trust Marco with my life. I trust him with yours. Why would I not trust him with Zara's? It was a perspective that made sense in the context of their lives, even if it would have seemed strange to anyone outside it. Safety was currency in Dante's world, and Marco offered that in abundance. The baby came on a snowy February morning, after 16 hours of labor that left Imani exhausted, and Dante looking like he had aged 10 years. Their daughter was perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with a cap of dark curly hair and her father's amber eyes. They named her Adora Lucia Caruso. Adora for Imani's grandmother, who had raised her mother with fierce love and endless sacrifice. Lucia for the grandmother who had welcomed Imani into the family with open arms and endless patience. She is beautiful, Dante whispered as he held his daughter for the first time. He looked terrified and awed and completely overwhelmed, This man who controlled half the criminal enterprise in Chicago, brought to his knees by a 7-pound infant. She looks like you. She has your strength. I can see it already. He traced a gentle finger over Adaora's tiny cheek. I will protect you with everything I have. I will teach you to be strong and smart and brave, and I will love you until my last breath. The tears Imani had been holding back finally spilled over. Watching Dante with their daughter, seeing the raw love in his eyes, she knew she had made the right choice. All of it. Every terrifying, improbable, impossible decision that had led her to this moment. I love you, she said. Dante looked up, Adeora cradled carefully against his chest. I love you too. Both of you. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. The first year of Adeora's life was a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings, and more joy than Imani had known was possible. Dante proved to be a surprisingly hands-on father, changing diapers and walking the floors at 2 a.m, and singing Italian lullabies in a voice that made Imani fall in love with him all over again. He scaled back his involvement in the more dangerous aspects of the business, delegating to Marco and others so he could be home more. The penthouse that had once felt empty was now filled with baby laughter and stuffed animals, and the constant stream of visitors who wanted to meet the Caruso heir. Because that was what Adaora was, whether Imani had wanted it or not. The next generation of a crime dynasty, a child who would grow up surrounded by power and danger and impossible choices. It was something she thought about often, in the quiet moments when Dante was at work and Adaora was sleeping, wondering what kind of life her daughter would have. You are worrying again, Dante said one evening, finding her on the balcony with a glass of wine and a troubled expression. I am always worrying. It is what mothers do. Tell me. Imani sighed. I think about what her life will be like, growing up knowing what her father does, what her family is. I think about the choices she will have to make, the things she will see, the dangers she will face. Dante was quiet for a moment. Then he moved to stand beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. I think about that too, every day. But here is what I have decided. He turned to face her. She will be raised with love, real love, not the transactional kind that passes for affection in most families like mine. She will be educated, protected, given every opportunity to become whoever she wants to be. And if, when she is old enough to understand, she wants no part of this life. He paused, something painful flickering in his eyes. Then I will let her go. I will set her up somewhere safe and far away, and I will never ask her to come back. You would do that? Give up your heir? She is not my heir. She is my daughter. There is a difference. I want her to be happy, Imani. That matters more than legacy, more than power, more than anything else. Imani set down her wine and wrapped her arms around him. You are a good man, Dante Caruso. I am trying to be. For you, for her, for the life we are building. They stood there until the stars came out, wrapped in each other and their future, and Imani thought about how strange and wonderful life could be, how one desperate night could lead to a love story that defied all logic. 2 years after that first night in La Stella Nera, Zara married Marco in a small ceremony in Lucia's garden. Imani served as matron of honor, Adaora as the world's most adorable flower girl, and Dante walked Zara down the aisle since she had no father to do it. After the ceremony, as the families mingled and the champagne flowed, Zara pulled Imani aside. I never thanked you properly. For what? For saving my life. Not just from those men in the warehouse. For everything before that. For raising me when Mom was working, for sacrificing so I could go to college, for walking into that restaurant when everyone else had turned you away. You gave me this life, Imani, all of it. You would have done the same for me. Maybe. Zara smiled. But I hope I never have to find out. They embraced, 2 sisters who had survived more than most, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. Later that night, lying in bed with Dante while Adora slept peacefully in the next room, Imani thought about everything that had happened since that desperate November night. The fear and the hope, the love and the violence, the impossible choices and the unexpected grace. What are you thinking? Dante murmured against her hair. I am thinking about how lucky I am. Lucky? Lucky that I walked into that restaurant instead of giving up. Lucky that you were there. Lucky that you are the kind of man who helps strangers who crash his dinner parties. Dante laughed softly. Lucky that you were brave enough to ask. I was desperate. Desperation and bravery are not mutually exclusive. He pulled her closer, his arms warm and solid around her. You showed me something that night, Imani. You showed me that there was still goodness in the world, still love worth protecting. I had forgotten that. Built walls so high I could not see over them. But you climbed those walls like they were nothing. They were something. She traced her fingers over his chest, feeling the scars that told stories she would never fully know. They were terrifying, actually. You were terrifying. And now? Now you are just my husband, the father of my child, the man who still makes my heart race when he walks into a room. Good. That is exactly what I want to be. They made love slowly that night, with a tenderness that came from years of building trust, from surviving challenges that would have broken weaker couples. And afterwards, as they drifted toward sleep, Imani thought about the story of their love. She needed $50,000 by midnight, and the Mafia boss made one phone call, but the real story was not about money or deadlines or criminals brought low. The real story was about love found in the unlikeliest of places, about courage rewarded and desperation transformed, about two people who should never have worked but somehow did. The real story was about Imani and Dante, and it was still being written. 5 years later, Imani stood in the kitchen of their home, a sprawling estate that Dante had built for their growing family. Adara was at the table doing homework, her amber eyes scrunched in concentration as she worked through a math problem. Their son, 3-year-old Emeka, was building a tower of blocks on the floor, his dark curls bouncing every time he added another piece. Dante came through the door at 6 o'clock exactly, as he did every evening he was in the city. He kissed Imani first, a lingering kiss that still made her stomach flutter after all these years. Then he scooped up Emeka, blocks scattering everywhere, and carried him over to help Adaora with her homework. Watching them together, her husband and her children, Imani marveled at how far she had come from that desperate woman crying in a restaurant doorway. She had a family now, a real one, complicated and imperfect and occasionally dangerous, but real. The phone rang. Dante glanced at the caller ID and his expression shifted, the gentle father disappearing behind the mask of the crime boss. He stepped out of the room to take the call, and Imani felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came with every reminder of who her husband really was. But then he came back, slipping his phone into his pocket with a shake of his head. Nothing important. Just business. Business that could wait. Business that will always wait for dinner with my family. He sat down at the table and the tension dissolved. They ate together, talking about school and work and the vacation they were planning for the summer. Normal conversation. Normal life. As normal as it could be when your husband ran half the criminal enterprise in the city. After dinner, after the children were bathed and read to and tucked into bed, Imani found Dante on the balcony with a glass of whiskey and a contemplative expression. Tell me. Tell you what? Whatever it is that has you looking like that. He was quiet for a moment, then his voice low, he said, I am considering stepping back. Handing more of the day-to-day operations to Marco, spending more time here with you and the children. What brought this on? Watching Adaora struggle with her math homework tonight. Seeing Emeka build that tower and knock it down and build it again. Realizing that I have spent so much of their lives looking at spreadsheets and dealing with problems that will still be there tomorrow. He turned to look at her. I do not want to miss any more. You are not missing anything. You are here every night, physically. But sometimes my mind is still at work, still calculating, still planning. I want to be truly present. For them. For you. Imani moved to stand beside him, leaning against his shoulder. You have given me everything, Dante. A home, a family, a life I never imagined. If you want to step back, I will support that. But do not do it because you think you owe me something. Do it because it is what you want. It is what I want. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. I want to watch our children grow up. I want to take you to Italy and show you where my grandparents lived. I want to grow old with you, Imani. Really old. Gray hair and grandchildren and all of it. Then let us do that. Yeah? Yeah. He kissed her, and it tasted like whiskey and promises in the future they were building together. And Imani thought, not for the first time, about how one desperate night had led to all of this. How love could bloom in the strangest soil. How courage, even the kind born from fear, could change everything. If you loved Imani and Dante's story of courage, desperation, and unexpected love, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment and tell me your favorite moment. Was it when she walked into that restaurant with nothing but hope? When he made that phone call? When they survived the shooting together? Or when she watched him with their children and knew she had made the right choice? Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story about love that defies all odds. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. And sometimes, the person who answers is exactly who you needed all along. Until next time, keep believing in the power of one moment to change everything.